Welcome to the History Stories podcast.
Great to be here.
We've got a really fascinating story lined up today, based on some fantastic history books and uncovered sources you shared with us. We're taking a historic road trip into the mystery of the Bloop.
Ah, yes, the Bloop, classic deep-sea puzzle.
Definitely. So picture this. Summer of 1997, way out in the remote South Pacific, these super-sensitive underwater microphones. They were actually built to listen for Soviet subs.
Yeah.
Which is, kind of wild in itself.
Quite the pivot, yeah.
Yeah.
From Cold War surveillance to, well, mysterious noises.
Exactly. Anyway, they pick up this incredibly loud, really deep, low-frequency groan, just unlike anything they'd ever heard before.
And loud is an understatement, really. The power behind it was immense.
They called it the Bloop. And this sound, it traveled for thousands of kilometers, starting from this really desolate spot. Actually closer to Antarctica than anywhere else, right?
That's correct. Very, very remote, which only added to the mystery, of course.
For sure. And for years, nobody really knew what it was. Was it geological? Maybe some secret military thing? Or, and this is the fun one, could it be some gigantic, unknown creature down there?
That last one definitely captured the imagination.
Didn't it just? So our mission on this historic road trip is to unpack all that, look at the theories, and hopefully get to the surprising truth behind the sound. Ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so based on those history books and sources, tell us a bit more about that initial detection in 97. What exactly went down?
Well, like you said, summer of 97. And it wasn't just a one-off sound. It was actually recorded several times by NOAA's hydrophones.
NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
That's the one. Their Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory, PMEL, was operating the hydrophone array. And they were able to triangulate the source to roughly 50 degrees south, 100 degrees west.
Which is, as you pointed out, incredibly remote. Almost near Point Nemo, isn't it? The furthest point from land.
Pretty much smack in the middle of nowhere, yeah. A fitting place for a mystery.
So what were these NOAA researchers actually listening for? I mean, they weren't hunting for sea monsters initially, I assume.
To color slightly. No, not quite. Their main goal, according to the sources, was monitoring the ocean's natural sounds. Things like underwater earthquakes, volcanic activity in the Pacific, standard ocean acoustics research, really. The Bloop just sort of showed up.
An uninvited guest on their recordings. And the tech they were using, this SOSUS network connection. Tell us more about that. You mentioned Cold War origins.
Right. SOSUS, the sound surveillance system. This was a highly classified U.S. Navy project starting back in the 50s. A huge network of underwater microphones or hydrophones laid on the seabed.
To track Soviet submarines, you said.
Precisely. They placed them very strategically to use something called the SOFAR channel, or deep sound channel. It's this layer in the ocean where low-frequency sound gets trapped and can travel, incredibly long distances with very little signal loss.
So a system designed for stealthy subs picks up this massive booming sound instead. That really puts the Bloop's power into perspective.
It absolutely does. For SOSUS to pick it up so clearly tells you this wasn't a trivial noise. And it wasn't just one hydrophone either.
Oh, multiple detected it.
Yeah, that's key. The signal hit multiple sensors spread over, initially they said over 3,200 kilometers, but later analysis showed it was detectable even further, maybe over 5,000 kilometers apart.
5,000 kilometers. That's staggering. Like hearing something from L.A. in Tokyo, you mentioned.
Something like that, yeah. It sounds unbelievable, but low-frequency sound travels exceptionally well in that deep sound channel. So that part wasn't the biggest shock, scientifically speaking. The real head-scratcher was what on earth could make a sound that powerful?
Okay, so what did the sound like? I know the name Bloop is catchy, but what did the actual data show?
Right, Bloop is memorable, but maybe a bit misleading. The analysis showed it was ultra-low frequency, probably under 100 hertz, a very deep rumble. And the amplitude, the loudness was extreme, among the loudest underwater sounds ever picked up.
And it wasn't just a flat tone, was it? You mentioned it changed.
Correct. It lasted about a minute, and crucially, it showed a rapid increase in frequency over that minute. It sort of swept upwards in pitch, but still in that very low range.
Interesting. And the recordings we often hear online, the ones that sound like a literal bloop.
Yes. Those are almost always sped up significantly, maybe 16 times faster than the original recording.
Why speed them up?
Well, mainly to bring the frequency up into a range that's easily audible for humans and easier for analysis. But the original was much slower, much deeper, more like a drawn-out low rumble.
And speeding it up might have made it sound more biological, more creature-like.
I think that's very likely, yeah. It certainly contributed to some of the speculation that followed.
Okay, so this strange, powerful, frequency-sweeping sound appears. What was the initial reaction from the scientists, like Dr. Christopher Fox at NOAA, who was looking at this data?
Well, confusion, mainly. They pretty quickly ruled out things like bombs or submarines. The acoustic signature just didn't match. It also didn't sound quite like typical earthquakes or volcanoes.
But it had some features that hinted at biology.
It did, that frequency variation. That's something you see in marine mammal calls. But the sheer power seemed impossible for any known animal. I mean, they calculated it had to be many times louder than even a blue whale's call.
And blue whales are the loudest animals on Earth.
Exactly. So louder than the loudest known animal, that leaves you scratching your head. It was a genuine deep-sea mystery right from the start.
Okay, so the stage is set. We have this unexplained, incredibly powerful sound. Let's get into the theories. The big one, the one everyone loves talking about, is the giant monster theory. What did the sources say about that?
Ah, the colossal creature. Yes, that absolutely dominated the public interest. The idea of some undiscovered leviathan lurking in the depths. It's compelling stuff. And, like we said, the frequency variation did offer a tiny bit of initial scientific justification for at least considering a biological source.
But the volume was the huge hurdle.
The main one, yes. To make a sound that travels 5,000 kilometers would require an animal vastly, vastly larger than a blue whale. Or, alternatively, some completely unknown way of making sound, something biologically unprecedented. People threw around numbers like 700 feet long.
700 feet.
Right.
That's movie monster territory.
Yeah.
Were there other problems with the theory?
Definitely. I mean, think about it. A creature that big, wouldn't it need to surface for air sometimes? Unless it had gills the size of a bus or something totally alien, you'd think it might have been spotted.
Good point.
And then there's the question of how it would make the sound. Things like giant squid were mentioned, but they don't have swim bladders or lungs, the kind of structures usually needed for generating loud, low-frequency calls underwater. The physics just didn't seem to add up for any known biology.
So biologically, very improbable, even if it's exciting to think about. But then there was that other weird connection that popped up, H.P. Lovecraft. Cthulhu.
Yes. That was a truly bizarre coincidence. The location pinpointed for the Bloop 50 South, 100 West, turned out to be remarkably close to the coordinates Lovecraft gave in his story, The Call of Cthulhu, for the sunken city where Cthulhu is imprisoned.
No way. Really?
Yep. Obviously just a coincidence, but you can imagine how that fueled the imagination online. It cemented the bloop in, like, internet folklore.
I bet. It adds a whole layer of creepy fun to it, even if it's fiction.
Absolutely. It shows how we like to map stories onto mysteries, but scientifically it wasn't a serious contender, of course.
Right. So, beyond monsters and cosmic horrors, what other, maybe more plausible ideas were floated? Geological sources.
Yes, geological explanations were definitely considered more seriously. Things like large underwater landslides or maybe some kind of unusual volcanic activity.
Could those make a sound like the bloop?
They can make powerful low-frequency sounds for sure. But the specific signature of the bloop, that relatively long duration, the upward frequency sweep, didn't quite match the typical recordings of earthquakes or volcanoes, which are often sharper, more abrupt sounds. There were even some less serious suggestions about undersea, well, volcano gas releases.
Light chuckle. Okay, covering all bases. What about human activity? Secret military stuff.
That was looked at too, naturally. Covert tests, new types of submarines, underwater construction,
Right.
You name it. But again, the sound profile didn't really fit known artificial sources. And Dr. Fox and the NOAA team seemed to dismiss this fairly early on. The sound was just too powerful, and the location too remote for most plausible military explanations.
So it seems like for a good while, none of the explanations fit perfectly, leaving the mystery wide open, with the creature theory kind of lingering in the public mind just because it was the most dramatic.
Pretty much, yeah. The
Like-
lack of a clear, conventional explanation kept the door open for more exotic ideas, at least in popular discussion.
But, as we hinted earlier, the real answer came from somewhere else entirely. It involved ice.
Exactly. While everyone was debating monsters, the scientists kept gathering data, especially using newer hydrophones placed closer to Antarctica. And the solution came from understanding the sounds of the cryosphere, the world of ice.
And interestingly, your sources mentioned that the ice idea wasn't totally new. even back when the monster theory was gaining traction.
That's a really important point. You're right. Dr. Fox himself, even while acknowledging the biological similarities in some interviews around 2002, had actually suggested back in 2001, I think it was a CNN piece, that ice calving in Antarctica could be the source. So the idea was there, simmering away.
So it was always a possibility, just maybe less exciting than Cthulhu. What was the key evidence that finally shifted the balance firmly towards ice?
It was really the accumulation of new data from NOAA's expanded hydrophone network near Antarctica. This wasn't a specific bloop hunt, mind you, but part of their ongoing work monitoring sounds in the Southern Ocean, seismicity, volcanoes, marine life, the whole soundscape.
And these new microphones started picking up similar sounds.
They picked up lots of powerful, low-frequency rumbles coming from the Antarctic region. And crucially, when they analyzed the spectrograms, those visual charts of the sound frequencies.
Right, the unique fingerprint of the sound.
Exactly. The spectrograms of these new Antarctic sounds were often a dead ringer for the original 1997 Bloop spectrogram, sometimes virtually identical.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Could they link these new sounds directly to ice events?
Yes, they could. They were able to correlate these sounds directly with large icebergs cracking, breaking apart, calving off glaciers, essentially, massive icequake events or cryoseisms.
Icequakes, like earthquakes, but in ice.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Huge stresses build up in these massive ice structures, and when they fracture, it releases enormous energy, creating powerful vibrations within the ice and sending strong sound waves out into the water. And importantly, calculations showed these icequakes were easily powerful enough to generate sounds detectable over 5,000 kilometers.
Just like the Bloop.
Just like the Bloop, it ticked all the boxes: the right frequency range, the right power level, the ability to travel vast distances.
Was there one specific event that really nailed it?
There was a very strong piece of corroborating evidence around 2008. NOAA managed to acoustically track a massive iceberg called A53A as it broke up near South Georgia Island. The sounds produced during its disintegration were, again, very, very similar to the Bloop's signature. That, combined with reanalyzing the arrival times of the 97 signal, really pointed strongly towards the iceberg-heavy regions off Antarctica as the origin.
It really sounds like a patient scientific detective story just following the data.
It absolutely was. It wasn't one sudden eureka moment, but rather a growing weight of evidence over several years.
So when did NOAA make it official? When did they say, okay, it's ice?
By about 2011 or 2012, the scientific consensus within NOAA was clear. They publicly stated that the Bloop was almost certainly the sound of a large Antarctic icequake. Dr. Robert Ziak, another NOAA scientist heavily involved in the Antarctic acoustic work, became quite vocal about this conclusion.
And he confirmed these ice sounds are pretty common.
Oh, yeah. He mentioned that their hydrophones pick up literally tens of thousands of these bloop-like icequake sounds every single year. It's a regular part of the Antarctic soundscape. He also noted, perhaps slightly dryly, that most NOAA researchers never really bought into the sea monster idea. They saw it as more fantasy than science.
Which is fair enough from their perspective. It's a fantastic example of the scientific process, isn't it? Start with a puzzle, explore hypotheses, gather more data, refine, and eventually land on the explanation that best fits all the evidence.
Exactly. Persistence, better technology, and a willingness to consider natural, albeit powerful, phenomena. Understanding the background noise, even spectacular noise like ice cracking, was key.
Okay, let's wrap up this historic road trip. We started back in '97 with this baffling sound from the deep, picked up by Cold War tech.
The SOSIS network, yeah.
Sparking theories of giant creatures, maybe even Lovecraftian monsters, based on those history books and sources we looked at.
Then came the crucial breakthrough. More hydrophones near Antarctica picking up sounds that were a match. Sounds linked directly to massive icebergs cracking apart these icequakes.
Right. The sheer power of these ice quakes explained the Bloop's loudness and range. And by 2011-2012, NOAA could confidently say the Bloop was the sound of Antarctic ice calving. It really underlines how persistent science and sometimes unexpected data can solve big mysteries.
But, the story doesn't quite end there. There's a potential epilogue or maybe a connection to a much bigger story.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the very fact that these huge ice calving events are happening, generating sounds like the Bloop, there's a growing understanding, or at least strong suspicion, that the frequency of these massive iceberg breakups might be increasing.
And that connects to
climate change, global warming's impact on the polar ice sheets. So the Bloop, which started as this deep-sea enigma, might actually be carrying a message, however faint, about the enormous changes happening to our planet's climate.
Wow, that adds another layer entirely. from sea monster mystery to a potential climate change signal.
It's a fascinating turn, isn't it?
It really is. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other things out there that seem mysterious or unexplained right now might actually have natural explanations? Explanations that are maybe just as awe-inspiring as a giant monster, like the immense power of an iceberg cracking apart.
Absolutely. There's still so much we don't know about our oceans, about our planet, plenty of other bloop-like puzzles likely waiting for their solution.
A great thought to end on. We hope this historic road trip has sparked your curiosity. Let us know your thoughts and definitely follow the History Stories podcast for more amazing tales from the world of Flash culture.
Thanks for listening.